What do you think $100 can turn into in Uzbekistan? The answer is almost 1.2 million Uzbekistani som, and that alone tells you how affordable this country can feel for many visitors. But Uzbekistan is not only about cheap prices. It is also known for beautiful women, colorful Silk Road cities, busy markets, and warm hospitality that make strangers feel welcome. Today, we'll take a closer look at Uzbekistan, a cheap, beautiful, and friendly country, with many surprises waiting behind its ancient streets. Number 1. A country locked inside. Like other landlocked countries, Uzbekistan has no coastline of its own. But here is what makes it truly unusual. It is one of only 2 countries in the world that are double landlocked. That means every country around it is landlocked too. So for anything from here to reach the open ocean, it has to cross at least 2 other national borders first. On the entire planet, only tiny Liechtenstein shares the same situation. Uzbekistan also stretches across more than 173,000 square miles, about the size of California. And with a population of more than 38 million, it is the most populous country in Central Asia. But this isolated position was not always a weakness. Back when the world did not depend on sea trade, Uzbekistan was sitting right in the middle of the Silk Road. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara were basically giant toll stations. Any caravan moving from China toward the Mediterranean had no choice but to pass through here, rest here, and spend money here along the way. Uzbekistan also holds another strange record. It is the only country in Central Asia that borders every other country in the region: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, while also touching Afghanistan to the south. And there is another interesting detail too. The names of all 5 of those neighboring countries end with the suffix stan. In ancient Persian, stan means land. But the name Uzbekistan carries an even more striking meaning: the land of the free, because it sits so deep inside the continent with no ocean nearby to soften the climate. Summer here can feel like a giant oven. In some parts of the country, temperatures can climb past 50 degrees Celsius. Winter brings the opposite extreme with freezing weather snow and cold winds sweeping across the land. And that brutal summer heat has created one of the country's strangest everyday sights. The roads are full of white Chevrolets. A lot of people assume locals are simply obsessed with white cars, but in reality, it is basic survival physics. White reflects heat better than darker colors, which helps stop the inside of the car from turning into a pressure cooker under the blazing sun. And Chevrolet has long dominated the local market, which is why the combination is everywhere you look. And what about you? What car are you driving, and where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Number 2. Culture shocks in Uzbekistan. If you visit Uzbekistan, one of the first things that may surprise you is that hospitality here does not feel like a personal choice. It feels more like an unwritten law. From where you sit to how tea is poured, even small moments follow a code that has been shaped over centuries. In a traditional guest room, the most respected guest is usually invited to sit farthest from the door, because in the old steppe mindset, that place was seen as the safest, warmest, and most honorable spot in the room. The closer you sat to the entrance, the lower your place in the gathering usually was, or the more likely you were the one serving others. This is not meant to insult anyone. It is simply the Uzbek way of preserving order, dignity, and respect inside the community. The clearest example is tea. In much of the West, filling a guest's cup to the top is a sign of generosity. But in Uzbekistan, if a host pours your bowl full right away, that can send a very negative message. It is a polite way of saying, "Drink this and leave soon." A truly welcoming host usually pours only a small amount, because that means they must keep refilling it, keep paying attention to you, and keep the conversation alive. Before serving the first bowl, the host may also rinse it with hot tea and pour it back into the teapot, warming the bowl and helping the tea taste the way it should. And even if you are not thirsty, refusing tea can be seen as rude because accepting at least a sip means you are accepting the welcome too. That same respect appears in everyday language. In Uzbekistan, people generally do not like being addressed too casually, especially by strangers. If you call a taxi driver Jasur, aka, or a market seller, Dilnoza Opa, the barrier between tourist and local can disappear almost immediately. AKA means something like older brother, and Opa means older sister. Even greetings follow their own code. Handshakes are common between men, but when greeting a woman, a more respectful gesture is often to place your right hand over your chest and give a slight bow rather than reaching straight for a handshake. And at the end of a meal, many people raise both hands and gently wipe them over the face in a gesture known as Amin, a quiet way of expressing gratitude to both God and the host. In other words, in Uzbekistan, good manners are not just about being polite. They are about showing that you understand how respect is supposed to look.
Thank you.
Number 3. The power of gold. Uzbekistan is sitting on a real treasure, and this time, that is not just a figure of speech. The country is often described as having the world's 4th largest gold reserves, and deep in the Kizilkum Desert lies the giant Muruntau mine, an open pit around 600 meters deep, and so huge it can be seen from space. Every year, tens of tons of gold come out of this desert, making it one of the pillars of the national economy. But Uzbekistan has another kind of gold, too white gold. Across the countryside, cotton fields once stretched for miles, and cotton became one of the country's biggest export industries. For years, keeping that system alive meant mass labor during harvest season, when huge numbers of people from students to medical workers were sent into the fields to meet state quotas. And that is where the story turns dark. Cotton is a thirsty crop, so to feed those fields in the middle of the desert, the authorities diverted the Amu Darya and Sir Darya rivers. The result was the destruction of the Aral Sea, once the world's 4th largest lake. In less than a lifetime, about 90% of it was lost, leaving behind a salt desert rusting ships and toxic dust storms that damaged both livelihoods and health. So yes, gold and cotton gave Uzbekistan real economic power, but the drying of the Aral Sea remains a scar the country can never fully erase. Number 4. The secret allure of Uzbekistan's women. When you arrive in Uzbekistan, one thing many visitors notice right away is the women. Part of that comes from the country's long history on the Silk Road, where Persian, Turkic, Mongol, and Slavic influences all passed through the same land, leaving behind a look that can feel surprisingly mixed from one face to the next. In one city, you may notice dark hair, almond-shaped eyes, and warmer skin tones, and in another, lighter hair and blue eyes that feel closer to Eastern Europe. That mix is part of what makes Uzbekistan feel so visually different from the simple stereotypes many outsiders bring with them. At the same time, this is still a mostly Muslim country, but it runs under a secular legal system, and that changes how many outsiders read what they see. On the streets of Tashkent, you will see jeans, skirts, and bright dresses alongside more modest clothing, which is one reason the country often surprises first-time visitors. Another common misunderstanding is polygamy. Some foreigners assume that because Uzbekistan is majority Muslim, men can simply take multiple wives, but that is not true. Polygamy is illegal, and Uzbek law allows penalties that can include up to 3 years in prison, even though unofficial second family arrangements still exist quietly in some places. And then there is one detail many outsiders never forget once they notice it: gold teeth. Among older generations especially, A gold smile has long been seen as a sign of pride status and beauty, even if the custom is fading among younger people. And no, not every woman here belly dances. That is mostly a foreign fantasy. Traditional Uzbek dance follows its own styles, especially Fergana Bukhara and Khorezm, with a much stronger focus on the hands, the upper body, and controlled, elegant movement. So, if you want to know the secret to winning over Uzbek women, do not be shy. Drop a number 3 in the comments, and I will reveal it to you. Number 5. The Holy Loaf. In the United States, bread is just everyday food. You buy it, toast it, eat it, and move on. But in Uzbekistan, it is almost sacred, a symbol of life, family, and faith. Locals call it naan, and many believe it is literally the gift of God. That is why dropping bread on the ground is taboo. If it happens, people pick it up, kiss it, and place it on a high surface as a sign of respect. Every loaf is round, symbolizing the sun, the source of life and energy. Before baking, each one is decorated with patterns using a traditional Czech stamp, and every region has its own design. Then, bakers lean deep into a blazing tandoor oven, heated to nearly 400 degrees Celsius, 750 degrees Fahrenheit, to slap the dough onto its inner wall. It is as risky as it sounds. What makes this even more fascinating is how deeply bread is tied to Uzbek tradition. At weddings, families pray and share bread, believing it can bring love or luck. When a baby is born, a loaf may be placed under the pillow for a blessed future. Before young men leave for military service, they take one bite of bread and leave the rest at home until they return safely. Hospitality in Uzbekistan begins with bread. Every guest, even a stranger, is offered a piece first. That is why Tashkent is often called the city of bread. During World War II, when famine swept the region, locals shared what little they had, mostly bread, with refugees from across the Soviet Union. In Uzbekistan, bread is not just food. It is a blessing, a bond, and a promise that no one should ever eat alone. But if bread is the soul of Uzbekistan, the rest of its cuisine is where the country starts to surprise you. Number 6. The unforgettable flavors of Uzbekistan. Step into Uzbekistan and you quickly realize this country does not just eat food, it celebrates it. Markets, homes, and street corners all smell like something is roasting, bubbling, or sizzling, as if the whole country were one giant kitchen. And at the center of it all is plov, the dish that feels less like a meal and more like a symbol of national pride. Picture a huge iron pan over open fire filled with golden rice, tender lamb or beef carrots, peas and spices strong enough to perfume the air for blocks. At weddings and festivals, men gather before sunrise to cook plov in batches big enough to feed entire crowds. These master cooks, known as oshpaz, need both serious technique and serious strength to handle food on that scale. For one standard batch, they may use up to 100 kilograms of lamb or beef and around 40 liters of sunflower oil to create plov's rich, glossy texture. Every region, and often every family, has its own version, with additions like raisins, chickpeas, garlic, or even quail eggs. And people say there are more than 60 variations across the country. Once a royal meal reserved for kings and warriors, legend claims Alexander the Great's army was first fed with early versions of plov after battle, an energy-rich dish to keep soldiers alive and marching. Today, it is served everywhere, from humble roadside stalls to gleaming restaurants in Tashkent, where even the fanciest portion can cost only about $2.45, cheaper than a cup of coffee in the United States. But for Uzbeks, plov is more than food. It is a ritual. It is cooked for births, weddings, and funerals, often before sunrise, and shared after morning prayer. That is part of why it carries so much weight here. Every bite feels tied to memory, faith, and family. Still, Uzbekistan's culinary world goes far beyond rice and lamb. Locals often call their homeland the land of melons. And with good reason, more than 150 varieties grow here, each with its own sweetness and fragrance. Many farmers say the first bite of a perfectly ripe melon brings luck for the rest of the year. And surprisingly, this same soil is where the world's original wild apple once grew, the ancestor of every modern apple we eat today. Then comes kumis fermented mare's milk, which may test a visitor's courage. It is slightly sour, lightly alcoholic and foamy on the tongue. And for many outsiders, one sip already feels like an adventure. Another classic is shirpa, a thick meat soup loaded with lamb carrots, onions, and heavy pieces of fat still clinging to the bone. It is not a broth you sip, it is one you chew. And then Uzbekistan pushes things even further. One of its more daring traditional dishes is beef lung stuffed with milk rice and spices, then slow cooked until it turns soft on the outside and creamy inside. It is exactly the kind of food that reminds you this country does not just feed people, it also tests how curious they really are. Number 7. The paradox of safety and money. When many people hear the suffix "stan," their first reaction is usually fear. A lot of Western media has trained people to connect this whole region with danger, instability, and the shadow of Afghanistan. But Uzbekistan keeps breaking that image. It is scored ahead of both the United States and the United Kingdom on Gallup's Law and Order Index, which helps explain why so many visitors are surprised by how safe it feels. And that safety is not just something you read in a ranking. You can walk alone through the wide avenues of Tashkent or the narrow streets of Bukhara at 2 o'clock in the morning without worrying about being robbed or attacked. Part of that comes from the state, but part of it also comes from something older, a social code built around family honor, neighborhood reputation, and a long tradition of respecting travelers. In Uzbekistan, cheating or harming a guest from far away is not just a personal disgrace. It can feel like a stain on the whole family. But while your body may feel safe here, your wallet steps into a completely different kind of confusion. Welcome to the world of the accidental millionaire. At today's exchange rate, $100 was worth about 1,204,249 som, which means changing a fairly normal amount of money can instantly hand you a stack of cash that makes you feel richer than you really are. A few years ago, the experience was even more absurd. Back then, when the black market still had a much bigger role in currency exchange, travelers often needed plastic bags or backpacks just to carry the cash they got from changing a relatively small amount of foreign currency. Past inflation left behind a legacy of overwhelming numbers, turning even the most ordinary daily transaction into a mental math exercise. If Uzbekistan's money can confuse you, wait until you step into one of its oldest spaces of cleansing, healing, and quiet ritual. Number 8. The steamy soul of Uzbekistan. If you really want to understand Uzbekistan, do not start with the monuments. Start with the steam. Hidden behind blue domes and busy bazaars is one of the country's oldest traditions, the hammam. And this is not just about getting clean. It is about resetting the body and quieting the mind. In places like Bozori Khord Hammam in Bukhara, a bathhouse that has been operating since the 16th century, you step into warm stone, soft light, and thick steam, and the whole place feels like it has been waiting for you for hundreds of years. The hammam is also a social space. Men and women bathe separately, but on both sides, people talk about family work and everyday life. Some of the most honest conversations do not happen in cafes here. They happen in steam. The process is simple but intense. Warm water first, then the rough kisi scrub that strips away dead skin, then soap massage, and a final rinse that wakes up your whole body. Many people finish with tea and just sit there, letting the heat slowly leave them. For centuries, hammams were tied to both religion and healing. They were practical spaces for ritual purification before prayer, but they were also seen as places where heat and steam could help the body recover. Even Silk Road travelers stopped in cities like Samarkand and Bukhara to wash, rest, and begin the next leg of the journey feeling human again. Under Soviet rule, many hammams were closed or pushed aside as something old-fashioned, but today, some have been restored and are part of the country's living tradition once again. And Uzbekistan adds one more twist. Near the Aral Sea region, some visitors try desert sand baths, where the sun heats mineral-rich sand to around 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, and people bury themselves in it for short sessions that are said to help with joint pain, inflammation, and rheumatism. A traditional hammam session in places like Bukhara is often around 100,000 to 150,000 UZS, roughly 8 to 12 US dollars, while more luxurious spa-style experiences can cost much more. So in Uzbekistan, healing does not always come in a clinic. Sometimes it comes through steam, stone, and a little suffering you strangely end up enjoying. And once the steam fades, Uzbekistan reveals another side of itself, one that is louder, brighter, and much harder to forget. Number 9. The most unusual and captivating festivals. The biggest celebration in Uzbekistan is Nowruz, held every year on March 21st to welcome spring. It is the Persian New Year, but here it feels deeply personal. Streets fill with flowers, music, and long tables of food. Families gather to cook sumalak, a sweet wheat pudding that takes almost 24 hours to make, slowly stirred through the night, while women sing songs about luck and renewal. People visit relatives, forgive old arguments, and sometimes release doves as symbols of peace. Many locals believe the way you spend Nowruz sets the tone for the rest of the year, so everyone tries to fill it with laughter, dancing, and plenty to eat. But Uzbekistan does not stop at one kind of celebration. In the Fergana Valley, farmers gather each May for the Melon Festival, a cheerful tribute to the country's favorite fruit. Markets overflow with melons of every shape and color, and judges cut them open to find the sweetest one. The winner can earn prizes, local fame, and sometimes much more attention than you would expect for growing a melon. That may sound funny, but in Uzbekistan, melons carry real national pride. Then there is the Bukhara Silk and Spices Festival, where the old streets feel like an open-air museum. Women in embroidered atlas robes weave silk on wooden looms. The air fills with the smell of saffron, cumin, and coriander. And dancers perform to the beat of dwaira drums, while merchants call out to passing visitors. In some corners, you can even watch silk being spun by hand, using techniques that go back to the days when caravans still crossed these same streets. Another festival that feels completely different is Boysun Bahori, held in the mountain region of Boysun. It feels almost like stepping into another century. Shepherds play flutes, children wear handmade masks, and villagers perform stories about heroes, spirits, and nature. Many people see it as one of the last living echoes of very old Central Asia, when songs and stories were the only way history could survive. And just when you think Uzbekistan is all tradition, Tashkent hosts a lively beer festival in summer with rock music and street food, a reminder that this country knows how to balance old customs with modern fun. In Uzbekistan, celebration is not something you just watch from the side. It pulls you in whether you planned for it or not. Number 10. The Legacy of Samarkand. Samarkand is not just an old city. It is a city with more than 25 centuries of history, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth. A living museum that has watched empires rise, collapse, and disappear. Its power came not only from age, but from location. Sitting at the crossroads of the Silk Roads, Samarkand became a meeting point where goods, religions, ideas, and knowledge moved between China, India, and the Mediterranean world. When Alexander the Great captured the city in 329 BC, he is said to have admitted that everything he had heard about Samarkand, the city's ancient name, was true, except that it was even more magnificent than he had imagined. At the heart of Samarkand stands Registan Square, the most dazzling symbol of Central Asia. In Persian, Registan means sandy place, but what rises there today feels more like an explosion of blue and gold. The square is framed by three great madrasas built between the 14th and 17th centuries, and together they represent the peak of Timurid art, with glowing blue domes and geometric decorations so detailed it almost feels unreal. One of the most striking is Tilya Kori Madrasa. Its name means gilded, and more than 30 kilograms of gold leaf were used to cover parts of its dome and interior, a clear sign that this was an empire rich not only in power, but in taste. And Samarkand was not only a place of beauty, it was also a place of knowledge. One of the greatest minds linked to the city was Ulugh Beg, the grandson of Timur, who turned Samarkand into one of the world's great centers of astronomy in the 15th century. He built a huge observatory and did something extraordinary. He mapped 1,018 stars with remarkable accuracy, using only the naked eye and handmade instruments. The West would not match that level of precision for another 200 years after the telescope had already been invented. That is what makes Samarkand so important. It proves that the greatest strength of a civilization does not come only from conquest, but from trade beauty and the desire to understand the world. And that is what makes Uzbekistan so unforgettable, a place full of surprises, history, and stories that deserve far more attention. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end, and for always being part of these journeys. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who would love discovering places like this too.